All right, we are being live streamed now. So for the public comment period, the applicants, all team members, and the public have been required to register, indicate the project they wish to comment on, and submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Just as in an in-person meeting, all applications heard today are part of a public meeting format. If you have registered and will speak during the public comment portion of the meeting, you'll need to state your name and address for the record. Those members of the public that have registered will be called in order by project. Staff will call on the registered members of the public to speak for each project. Unregistered members of the public who raise their hand will not be called on. For the board members will be polled by the chairperson for comments and their vote on a motion. Each member, when voting, should respond yay in favor or nay not in favor. The chair shall reread the motion verbatim, and the board member making the motion should correct the chair if she has not reread the motion accurately. The board member needs to recuse, he or she will be temporarily removed from the meeting and placed back in the meeting at the start of the next agenda item. If the board needs to go into executive session, they will call into a separate conference line, and video and audio on Zoom will be temporarily turned off until they're ready to return to the regular meeting. The results and staff comments will be posted on the city website at www.charleston-sc.gov/VAR. These proceedings are being recorded and broadcast to the City of Charleston's YouTube channel.
Thank you, Kim. We are now, agenda item number 145 Church Street has been withdrawn for staff review, and we are on agenda item number 207 Calhoun Street. Fillmore Wilson has recused himself, and if you'll, all right. Kim, if you'll give us an introduction.
Sure, thanks, Lindsay. 207 Calhoun Street is requesting preliminary approval for the renovation of the building, including repairs to windows, doors, stucco, flashing, and roof, and exterior ADA access with new ramps, handrails, and additional egress with access to the fourth floor. Building's category 2 in the Charleston Village. It was built in 1817 and in the old historic district. Here's an aerial image just to familiarize yourself with the property between Pitt and Cumming. Here it is on the south side of Calhoun Street. Just a couple images. And this is looking east on Calhoun and looking west. And with that said, I'll turn it over to the applicant for the presentation. We have Mr. Jeremy Tate.
Okay, can y'all hear us?
Yes, we can.
Great. So I'm Jeremy Tate, and I'm joined by Abby Gentry and Brittany Smith from Metters. Thank you for this opportunity to present this project. Kim, if you could advance the slide, please. And keep going. So we'll start here. So as Kim said, the structure was built in 1817, and it remained a residence, including a parsonage up until the 1960s. Next slide, please. So here are the Sanborn maps that kind of show the progression. There's a front building and then a two-story building at the rear, and they got connected along the way. In the 1974 renovation by George A.Z. Johnson, the rear building was demolished and a two-story CMU building was put in its place, and a portion of the historic stable still remains. Next slide. More Sanborn maps, keep going. Next slide, please. Next slide. The top picture there is the restoration in 1976 as it was complete. One thing to note quickly in this picture is that the south end, right-hand side of the image there, you can begin to see the first example of that existing fire escape. This is the first time we found that it came into existence. We found an aerial from 1971 where the piazza still remained wrapping. So at this time, we believe that section of the piazza was removed on that south side and the exterior fire escape was installed. Next slide. And let's just keep going. Next slide. Next. next, and next. One more. Okay, so the majority of what we are discussing for this presentation today has to do with accessibility and egress improvements to the facility. As was stated, we have performed a complete conditions assessment. We will correct deficiencies due to lack of maintenance, deferred maintenance on the structure. But the things that I wanted to kind of talk about, bring to your attention, are the improvements to the ADA and egress. So on the east side of the property, which would be the bottom of the plan, there is a current ADA concrete ramp. It does not have proper railings on either side, so we will be bringing proper guard and railings to that ramp. On Calhoun Street, there are a series of stairs that come up into the Piazza entrance, and they do not contain any handrails for the safe access to that Piazza. We'll be proposing to bring guards and rails to that. And then from the parking lot on the west, which will be top of the plan onto the Piazza, those curved cheek walls, we are proposing to add guards and rails to that for proper accessibility, keeping the center rail intact. Now, on those three elements, there is a detail sheet we'll get to later, but it's a standard Julius Bloom cap with half-inch by half-inch painted steel pickets and a bottom rail. So a very simple railing design. The two other things that are more of a change have to do with the existing wooden ADA ramp that kind of parallels that back portion of the building on the west side. It's put out of commission currently. We're proposing to remove it completely and to replace it. And the existing egress stair, as shown in this image here, it continues all the way up to the third floor. It does not go to the fourth floor. The fourth floor is a habitable floor. That stair, we recommend its replacement. It's impinging on that French door at the first level, which we are going to be aiming to make the ADA door for the front building. Also, it's not a very safe, it's not within dimension to be a safe egress, especially considering that it'll be used under emergency situations. Next slide, please. So our proposed, I'll start with the ramp. We're starting and thought of this ramp to kind of angle back closer to the building. And it would be a concrete ramp at its base coming up to a new concrete landing, which would be ADA compliant, to a rear door at the south end of the property. And then the ramp would switch back until about mid-span on that rear building, at which point it would bridge, become a bridge ramp to lightly span across to the existing Piazza. At the Piazza, it would then transition down to that French door and a ramp back down to the Piazza on the west side of the building. The construction that we're proposing of that ramp and associated landing would be structural steel framework supporting an extruded grading system from McNichols that's ADA compliant. The idea of this is to be a very light construction and would kind of hover over the existing Piazza floorboards and lightly, be supported off of that floor. So have as minimal impact as possible to the historic fabric that does remain at the west edge of that Piazza. Where the stair is removed, it provides an opportunity for us to provide an ADA restroom in the corner of the hyphen for the front building, which is elevated about 26 inches above the rear building. And so we're tucking that ADA restroom into that corner. It will only exist at the first floor, and it'll be clad with a shiplap siding, very similar to the shiplap that exists in part of the hyphen now. And then the new stair would spring up from the western edge here that you see top of the page, and as it's coming up towards the east, it'll land on the second floor, and it'll follow that same pattern kind of all the way up to the fourth floor. We can quickly advance through the next slide. Next. Only thing I'm going to touch on here is that as the existing stair progresses vertically, the historic fabric of the second floor Piazza and the roof of the Piazza, it does not exist in its current configuration and hasn't since the mid-1970s. And what it's supported on is not a structural part of the Piazza. I mean, not a historic part of the Piazza currently. It's from the 1975 renovation project. So with the placement of this stair, we're not disturbing any historic fabric of the Piazza itself. Next slide. This is how it wraps up to the second floor. We do propose at this floor to reconstruct the Piazza flooring and use tongue and groove porch boards sloped to kind of restore that section, and then utilize it for the stairs going up and down. Next. 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 So then it will reach through the same path up to the third level. And at the third level, the landing will exist behind the Piazza roof that you see illustrated on the top of the page. Next. Next. It might be better to look at the next part at the roof plan next. Next. And one more. So as this will travel up to the fourth floor, which it currently does not go to the fourth floor, we're proposing removing a section of the roof south of the existing dormer to create a little well for the dormer window to be removed and a door to be placed. The roof is a copper roof from 1975-76 renovation. We would reclad that well with copper, and then we would extend the stair and landing into that well to connect to that door. Next slide, please. And this would show how that would kind of connect in at that location. Next. So this is the existing west elevation, and a small portion of the existing stair does extend slightly above the Piazza roof. Next. And one more, that's the demolition. So this is what going from the third floor to the fourth floor would do. This would, is exaggerated view, a flat 2D view from Pitt Street. The reality is at that perspective, you wouldn't see quite as obvious visibility of this, but it would be visible. Next. 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 It would be slightly visible from the east, but only in a 2D view. The library for the college does block part of this, and then from a perspective view, it would be hard to see part of this from the east. Next. It will be visible from the south if you're in the parking lot from the parking lot for the library. You'll see a good portion of it here. Next. Next. And this is the proposed. So this will show you the change up to the door to the dormer. Next. We'll go through these sections to show the routing of the stair. Next.
Tate, you got about a minute left.
Okay, next. 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 So materials on the right is the grading for the ADA ramp, and on the left is the handrail construction that we would use for the other access points around the first floor. Next. And then perspectives. The only thing I'm going to mention in closing is that because of the level of alteration that's being performed on this building, we're at a level 2 alteration in the IEBC. And per section 805, stories with one exit or access to one exit at the third story above grade plane and higher are not permitted by the code, which is why we're bringing this to you in order to comply with the code and keep the fourth floor habitable for the College of Charleston. We have to have this stair as a second egress up to the dormer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
I've got a quick one. Jeremy, did you give any thought to maybe, I don't know, limiting the square footage in that attic space to have it be designated as a mezzanine, or somehow to, work with the code to avoid having to take that stair up in such a dramatic way?
Yeah. So, the code is pretty clear that there's only 4 occupants up there. So when you run the code as a business, because of this being a College of Charleston, the square footage is 4 occupants. And there's a restroom up there too. So by the code, I have to treat that as a habitable floor. It's a 4th floor, and I have to have that second stair out.
Max, I don't know, and I would not not second guessing you, but if it were me, I'd really focus on that mezzanine designation and see if there's any way to have it comply with that. Because I ran into that myself on a sort of similar project and was able to designate that small attic space as a mezzanine, and it sort of worked. But just a thought, because I think that's the only element that I would be concerned about on this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to tag on, can y'all hear me, to what Julia said? I would talk to the building official, Ken Granada, and see if there's any other options. I agree with what Julia is saying. Can you go to, well, two quick questions. One, what is the height above grade of the first floor piazza? Is it over 30 inches?
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, you're asking the first floor above grade?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the first floor level it's above 30 inches, but
Okay.
there's a step down to the piazza. So the piazza, it's close to 30 inches.
Okay. I was just wondering if you had to have horizontal pickets at all. And the other question, can you go to the your enlarged stair plans?
Yes.
And this will be the last question. I'm not trying to grill you. I'm just trying to understand it.
Yep.
So, yeah, if you've
Which
got
one?
a plan, one of your plans, a floor plan that shows the stair.
They're all four on one page coming up.
Yeah, that's what I want to see.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask if you looked at, go one more, the floor below would be good. Well, not that one. You had one that showed all this. All right, just stop here. This is good. Okay, so right where your hand is, did you look at, it looks to me if you took a couple of risers off the south or a couple of treads off the south and transferred over to the right, then the whole stair could go down eastward so that it wouldn't be beyond the sort of rear building. You follow what I'm saying? That little corner sticking out. You've got basically the stair on two sides of it, but three sides, but not on the fourth. And if you put more risers on that side, then the whole stair gets smaller.
Well, it does in that location. And this is at the third level going down to the second level.
Yeah.
The height that I have to get from first to second has dictated that run while trying to maintain. So this is still is this still the third floor?
Yeah.
Yeah. You go back. See, is this second floor? This is second floor. Yeah. I have to, well, there's a number of things to factor in. The reason why this stair is starting where it's starting at the second floor and then going down to the first floor, so I have enough height to do that bathroom underneath it. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. I figured it was a little more complicated than I was thinking it would be. It just seems like you've got a little bit more run.
Yeah.
Than you're using I mean, to me, I'm like Julia, and we're getting into the comments a little bit, but obviously the tying into that top floor is what's most visible. That's the big issue. And then also to me, if you could somehow push it down, but maybe you can't. I mean,
I do believe that the third to the fourth floor, I could certainly, I mean, I'm going to be getting to that level anyway, but I could probably start the stairs down faster.
Yeah.
So they would have, it'd lower the visibility some.
Wow. It's a tough one. I just was asking if you looked at it. Sounds like y'all looked at it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other board questions? All right. Kim, how about public comment? I'm not seeing any letters in here except for Preservation Society. Is Susanna Catherine here?
Yeah, we have April Wood. People, you have the floor when you're ready to speak.
This is April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the application for preliminary approval for the renovation of the building, including repairs to the windows, doors, stucco, flashing, and roof, and the addition of an exterior ADA access and egress to the fourth floor, and we thank the applicant for their time walking through the application with us. Overall, we are generally supportive of the work. We do have concern about the additional egress to the fourth floor of the building. The alteration removes historic fabric at the dormer and roof. The additional stair is also highly visible from Pitt Street. While we understand the code requirements for the fire stair, we are concerned about the significant and visible alterations to accommodate the egress stair from the third to the fourth floor to be on the record. We hope that a more sensitive solution can be found. Thank you.
Thank you, April. Kim, do we have anyone else speaking from the
We
public?
do. We have Virginia Swift with Preservation Society. Perhaps.
Virginia, you're on mute.
Hi, good evening. Can you all hear me?
You can.
Hi there. My colleagues weren't able to make it, so I will be submitting comments for the Preservation Society. My name is Virginia Swift. The Preservation Society appreciates the applicant reaching out to us on this request. This is an early and significant Category 2 building, and we are encouraged by this proposal to conduct much needed maintenance and repairs to prolong the life of the building. However, we are not supportive of the introduction of an exterior egress stair that extends up to the fourth floor. As proposed, this structure will be highly visible and intrusive to existing historic fabric. We ask that alternative configurations be explored that are more sensitive to the form and fabric of the historic building, and in particular, the Piazza. The Preservation Society is sympathetic to the programmatic needs of the college and remains optimistic that a compromise can be reached that facilitates project objectives as well as preservation of the significant historic building. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Swift.
That's all we have.
All right. Then I'll turn it to you for city staff comments and recommendations.
Thanks, Lindsay. The conditions assessment is clear, complete, and serves as an exemplary example of preservation plan, and we support the proposal for all repairs. But that said, the applicant should explore an alternate proposal for egress from the fourth floor. The integrity of the historic fabric and the visual aesthetic of the architecture should remain in this Category 2 building. While we understand the need for egress, perhaps the program of this space could be relocated. Staff's recommending final approval for repairs, ramp, and handrails at Piazza, and deferral on the new construction of egress stair. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. Tate, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised public comment portion or by city staff?
No, I appreciate meeting with both Historic Charleston Foundation and Preservation Society, and we certainly understand the sensitive nature of what we're proposing. So that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. All right, I'll open it up for board discussion and a vote at this time.
This is Julia, and I think staff is right on target, and I think everything looks really great and thoughtful and thorough. And if the applicant could just find a time to meet with city staff and the building inspections department and maybe reconsider that attic space to somehow avoid the really obtrusive stair at that level, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll just chime in with, I agree with city staff and Julia's right on. This is a Category 2. So that's deemed an important structure to our city. And so I think it at least warrants, as exhaustive a study as we can. I have no doubt that the Metters team has studied this a lot, but I think it'd be good to go one more round with the city, especially building inspections. And I have one super minor comment. In this view here, the sort of front stair on the side of the Piazza, I don't think you need, I don't understand why you need to add two on either side of that stair if there's already a center one. There was never railings on either side. Why add those? We've already got one. So unless everybody disagrees, I just say don't add those others. And if you do add them, don't put pickets in rail and don't make it so obtrusive to the historic building.
It's Glenn. I concur completely with what has been said, including Eddie's comment about only adding railings that are necessary on that piazza stair. But I really do think that upper fire escape needs some very, very careful consideration to go up to that dormer.
All right. I'll just throw out a motion for a final approval for repairs, ramp, handrails. Let me restate that. A motion for a final approval of everything but deferral of new construction of egress stair and board comment to eliminate any additional railings and pickets that are not expressly required by the code.
I will second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for final approval of all proposed improvements with the exception of deferral on new construction of the egress stair and a board comment to eliminate any additional railings and pickets that are not required by code. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay. And we had a second by Glenn. So I'll put it to a vote. Eddie?
Yay, in favor.
Leah?
Yay in favor.
Glenn?
Yay in favor.
Chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Tate.
Thank you.
All right, if we can bring Fillmore back. And then we'll be on agenda item number 3 for Rag Street, Rag Square. And as soon as all right, Fillmore is back. Kim, I'll turn it to you for an introduction.
Great, thanks, Lindsay. 4 Rag Square is requesting final approval for repairs and replacements to Piazza, including CMU foundation, stone floor, first floor Piazza columns, railings, pickets, trim, and paint. The building is category 2 in the Ragboro neighborhood, constructed in 1840 and in the old and historic district. Here's an aerial for your familiarity with the project. You can see it has a sister house right next door to the east. Here's some just pictures of the existing site from a couple different angles. And looking west on Rag, and looking east. Some Sanborn maps, 1902 and 1955, missing the older ones. And with that said, I'll turn it over to the applicant for the presentation, Mr. Johnny Tucker. Johnny, you have the floor when you're ready. Got him.
Mr. Tucker, I see blue, but it's on mute.
Okay, sorry about that. This is Johnny Tucker, the architect. Had a little confusion there. So I'm representing the owner of the house, Edouard DeFranc. So this is, you probably know these houses. These were part of the 7 days of the week that were built for the Aikenwright house. So this is the second house to the west of Elizabeth Street. So So existing, it's a 4 unit apartment building. The owner actually occupies the top 2 units. And if you could go to the next slide, please. So he's having some pretty severe maintenance issues with the first floor piazza. Actually, you can see from the top right photograph that one of the columns actually sort of disengaged and fell off. Fortunately, the porch was okay. There's a temporary brace there. You can see what's sort of unusual about this piazza is it is sort of low to the ground, a little over 2 feet. And it's masonry with a stone flooring. And it's sort of interesting that the stone is sort of matched from the walkway. All of it is in pretty dire condition. We're going to obviously remove that pretty horrible metal railing. Fortunately, we don't need railing, so we'll eliminate that completely. Next slide, please. So here's some close-up of the condition of the piazza flooring. So the problem is the stucco over the brick, what we think is mostly brick existing foundation. The stucco sort of creates this edge with the existing stone flooring sort of in all different sort of conditions. So most of the conditions, the stone is within the stucco. So of course that results in a lot of delaminating of the stucco. And that's what you're seeing in most of these photos. Also in the lower left-hand corner, you'll see the existing, that's where the column fell off. The little pier bases are stone, not in the greatest shape, but we're going to salvage all of those. But you can see there's some severe structural issues with leaning. And obviously you can see where the stucco has completely come off in that one area. Next slide, please. So sort of close up of some other column conditions. I don't know, I like that lower left-hand corner photograph, you can see that is most definitely not a historic wood column. Some of the others, like this one in the upper right, appear to be. I don't have a full inventory of each column, but we feel like a majority, if not all of the columns are probably at the first floor piazza are probably in a pretty dire condition. So next slide, please. And that's showing the existing condition of on the piazza flooring where the stone is crumbling. You can see in the upper left photo that whatever foundation is floor underneath the stone is sort of giving way. Next slide, please. And so the area that of work is only on the first floor piazza. Second floor piazza is in pretty good condition. Next slide, please. So the area in question, again, first floor piazza. So ideally, what we're hoping to do is just replace the existing foundation with a new, but since we're having all the settlement of the piazza, with a new concrete foundation and CMU, but treat it so that with the finished view will be, they'll be stuccoed and exactly identical in appearance, except for, and you can see it on the upper details. So the problem with the existing flooring is it does not extend beyond the stucco, which I pointed out before. So the proposal is to, with the new stone flooring, have the floor extend approximately 3/4 inches over the face of the stucco, which will allow for a drip edge And obviously we maintain the stone plinths or bases for all the columns, and maintain as much of the railing and pickets, in fact, ideally all of them. With replacing columns, obviously they'd probably have to be removed, but replaced. And so really that is, the following sheets are just showing the structural drawings of how we would, they're sort of shown in my details as well. The block walls and the concrete slab, which will be the substrate for the new stone flooring. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Do we have any questions from the board?
I have one. Johnny, can you go to sheet 7? This is just a detailed question. Everything you do makes sense to me. But when you look at where, it's hard without just pointing to it, but is there any way to have the top of the stone that you're putting back at the bottom of the column? If you show right there, the column base is below it, and I think it's because it's sitting on concrete. Is there any way to pull that concrete up just at the columns? It just seems odd to me that the columns don't bear on the stone. Does that make sense? Do you see what I'm
I think that
asking?
makes perfect sense. If you could, Kim, if you could go to sheet 3 or 4. 4 probably better. The top left. So I guess I was in
Does that now? Okay.
trying to make it not change the existing appearance. I don't know if I think your detail's better. So I would sort of defer that to the board. I mean, I think I was trying to make so we weren't making any changes to the existing, other than, new material where needed. But I think that is probably a better solution. But I'll leave it to you and the board to dictate that.
Well, thanks. That clarifies a lot. Thank you.
And
Go ahead, Glenn.
sorry, I just have one clarification, Johnny, and I think you kind of said it verbally, but on sheet 7, your detail, the pickets are just sort of drawn as generic, but I'm just verifying that there are notes that those would be the existing pickets reused and then replaced only to match with that profile as needed.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that
Okay.
was that was me in a rush. And
No,
that's under the assumption we're not going to have to replace any of the pickets. I just did that as a placeholder, but the note is correct, and we would not be changing the picket profile.
Okay.
And hopefully
Yeah,
not changing
the pickets themselves look to be in pretty good condition from a look from the sidewalk.
The entire piazza above the stone bases, and of course the columns are, because of wicking, are in trouble. But this pickets upward in the second floor piazza are in surprisingly pristine condition.
Thank you.
I had one question about, I guess it might relate a little to Eddie's question about the condition at the column bases. Do you have any sense of how old, how original this current, paving is, this condition is?
That's a good question, Julia. I should have included photographs of number 2 Rag Square.
And it's got masonry too, but some sort of kind of nebulous conditions also.
Yeah, it actually it looks like they poured a topping slab over the condition. I probably should have included that just to see, so you could see that condition. And unfortunately, I have only found one photograph from I can't even remember the source, but it's showing like 4 of the days of the week. The last 2 are just think in the 50s, and none of them have any, I can't tell. I mean, I see the little relief where the column bases are proud of the main foundation wall, but no condition, I can't see any detail on of how it's treated. But yeah.
I just think if I had to bet, it doesn't seem to me like the thickness of those pavers really says original, or, you know what I mean? And some of them are in really bad shape. So I guess you're gonna, where you have to kind of match as best you can.
That's the thought, yes.
Okay.
Any other board questions? All right. Kim, do we have any public comment?
We do. We have April Wood from Historic Charleston Foundation.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the application for final approval for repairs to the Piazza at 4 Reg Square. We believe these repairs are reasonable and we recommend approval of this application. One more comment is that we don't recommend changing the historic detail of the stone decking at the base of the columns. Thank you.
Thank you, April. Kim, do we have anyone else speaking to the public?
No, we don't. That's all.
All right, you will give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Thanks, Lindsay. Staff recommend approval for these sensitive repairs. We thank the applicant for a thorough preservation plan, so we're recommending final approval.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. Tucker, did you want to clarify or respond to anything raised by the public or staff comments?
No, thank you.
All right, let's move into board discussion and a vote.
I think, go ahead, Tim.
Well, I would say I live right near this application and I've looked in the past, especially as the school to the west of this home had some proposals in the past few years, and I have never seen any photographs of the homes that were unfortunately lost there or the 2 homes that remain having a piazza floor that was not masonry. It is so atypical. It's just downright weird, to be honest. But I've never seen anything that proved otherwise. They seem to have both been very similarly built, at some point, whether it's original to the construction or not. I think that the brownstone flooring is historic at this point, but I'm in complete support of what has been requested. I think that little bit of a drip edge is reasonable to request, maybe minimize it a tad. But I think having the face of that stucco come up flush with the brownstone, especially with that brownstone not being perfectly even on the edge, is a reasonable ask. And I think the owner of this property has been a good steward of historic properties in the past, and I'm glad they're trying to keep this piazza upright.
Well, I agree. I think that I think the way the columns that I pointed out, and Johnny, you mentioned it too, it's very odd. That's very atypical. It looks to me like the columns were first on some piers, and then there was a stone added, and then over the years they sort of had to botch the vertical face, and there's really no way to fix it because stucco is always going to fall off when you have water coming down the top. So I have no issue with the detail that he's proposing to have a little lip. I think that's a good detail. To me, the only question is whether you sort of rectify the visual sort of strangeness of having a base that's below what it sits on or not. And I guess if it's always been that way, and Historic Charleston Foundation feels like that's the way to go, maybe that's just part of the quirkiness of these and we leave it alone. So unless the board has any issues, I'm fine with it being with approval as it is.
That's how I'm feeling, Eddie. Just Historic Charleston Foundation is fine with it. It's not going to bother me. So I guess the only comment that I might add to an approval would be to work with staff about stone replacement, because I don't think even half of that stone that's there is gonna be removed and salvaged successfully. But that said, how about just a motion for final approval with a board comment to coordinate with staff about stone replacement if necessary.
All right,
I'll
we have a
second.
motion on the floor for final approval, with a board comment to coordinate with staff on stone replacement if required. Glenn, did I hear a second from you?
I think Eddie did.
Yeah, it was me.
All right, Eddie, second. I'll put it to a vote. Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Glenn,
Yay in favor.
Julia,
Yay in favor.
Eddie.
Yay in favor.
The chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Tucker.
Thank you.
You're on agenda item number 4, 58 Hanover Street. Kim?
Don't go anywhere, Johnny.
I'm here.
58 Hanover Street is requesting preliminary approval for new construction. It's in the East Side neighborhood in the Old City District. And here's an aerial to familiarize yourself. It's just north of Columbus on the east side. And you can see the vacant lot here. And this is from Aiken Street. Looking north on Hanover and looking south. And with that said, I'll turn it over to Johnny.
Thank you, Kim. So again, Johnny Tucker, architect. I was in front of the board in May, and we were deferred. And I will address the comments and our sort of resolutions or response to those when we get to the elevations, because that's obviously where the changes occurred. So next slide, please. Next, sorry. So just more site photos. Next, please. And so this is obviously imposing the proposed structure on the streetscape. Next, please. And then across the street, the red dotted line is the massing of the proposed structure. Next, please. Okay, so the proposed changes, I'll get into in a little more detail, but this is where you can sort of see the main change. So the conceptual design that was brought in May, there was a lot of unease with the shed roof. So we have restudied that and we're proposing a hip roof. And we've also sort of reworked the other elements. I'll get into those when we get to the larger elevation. So next, please. So this is just a figure ground image showing that the proposed structure is actually completely in keeping with the massing. And I guess I probably should have pointed out the street elevations that were, even working with flood issues, were still, I think, nicely in the height, scale, and mass of the historic adjacent structures. Next, please. So I'll go through these pretty quickly. These are just the new floor plans, which are really not much different than the previous floor plans. So next, please. And then there's the new roof plan. You can see the hip roof. Next, please. And then, sorry, next, please. So the floor plans are almost identical. There is a reworking of the front entry area, which you'll see in the elevations coming up. So next, please. And second floor, the same. Next. And there's the roof plan. You can see the difference between the shed roof at the lower image and the proposed hipped roof. And the next. is, okay, so those are the 4 proposed elevations. And I guess go to the next one, and I'll go over the changes that were made relative to the staff comments. Okay, so the first comment that I think I've already touched on was the shed roof. I feel like the hipped roof obviously is sort of I think it's a much more refined solution. What we've done is the side element on the south side, I've sort of let that roof line engage so that has a hipped roof as well. You can sort of see that at the top west elevation, obviously the south elevation. And then another element that we have changed or revisited sort of completely was the trellised piazza entry element that's on the lower south elevation that we brought in May. I did a lot of study about that, and I just decided that it was sort of causing a little more grief than it was rewarding. So we've decided to sort of simplify that. And by doing so, we've lowered the front entry steps, or not the steps, but the entry roof line to another sort of hipped element that has metal roofing, which is sort of nice. And the front bay element, very similar to the previous proposal, but refined and also with the metal roofing. And then we've changed the front entry in the previous proposal. We just had a few steps, and then to deal with the flood issues, we had some internal steps that were not conditioned. Decided that was creating sort of a strange scale proportion with the element with the front door. So I've proposed masonry steps that eliminate all that. And then of course we just eliminate that lattice work. I think that's sort of a nicer solution. And then the next slide, please. This is one of the other comments. I think this was the last one from the board comments. There was some concern about the window placement on the north elevation, and it was a little bit of a hodgepodge. So we have refined that, sort of aligned some of the windows with the upper floor and the lower floor. Next slide, please. And then I'll go through these real quick, just half scale or half inch scale on elevations. And we've also, I forgot about this too. We've reduced the number of siding materials, and I'll get to that. I believe I know, yeah, we had a vertical board and batten on the side element. So we actually had like 3 main building materials: the lap, the ship lap, and then this board and batten. So we've reduced that. Next slide, please. And then, so now we just have the 2 elements, which you'll see in the upcoming image. Next, please. And the next slide, please. Building sections. Next slide, please. And then the wall sections, really simple detailing for, just simple different size bed molding based on the location, but, for a supporting molding. And then instead of at the cornice, we have, instead of crown molding, we use a cove molding. It's a simple house, it's on the east side, simple materials, but I think they're, with the mitered corners and the some of the simple materials. I think the cove molding is sort of a nice, it gives a shadow line and a nice profile, but it's sort of, it has a quieter profile. And next, please.
Tucker, you've got about 2 minutes left.
Okay, that's perfect. Almost done. Next, please. This is sort of the lower left. You can sort of see how that entry stairway is working. Masonry with bluestone paver treads and landing. Next, please. And there's the engaged roof piazza in the back. We talked about porch. Sorry, not piazza. Roof terrace. We talked about it in the last meeting. Next, please. And next. Oh yeah, and so here's the building materials to remind everybody. So just simple, I need to put my glasses on. 5/8 inch plank lap siding for the main body of the house. The flush nickel gap with mitered corners for the front element and the side element. Architectural shingles for the roof, the main roof element. 5E crimp for the metal areas, lime wash stucco. And then the steel railing at the front entry. And next slide, and then I'm done. Just the streetscape one more time. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Do my fellow board members have any questions for Mr. Tucker?
I do not.
All right. Kim, do we have any public comment? I did not see any in the Dropbox.
Good question. We don't have any public.
All right, well then if you'll give the city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Thanks. Sure. We feel that the applicant followed board directions from the previous meeting and we support the new design. We'd ask that the roofing material be consistent and that the primary volume and it be elevated to standing seam. And I just had one extra comment, but I think you've called out the material accurately. The hardy plank isn't appropriate as the artisan line has been discontinued, but I think you've picked out a good one. So we are recommending preliminary approval with staff comments and final review by staff.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. Tucker, did you want to clarify or respond to anything raised in the staff comment?
Oh, I'm going to tread lightly. I agree with staff comment number 3, but I would also sort of impress upon the board that I know you don't care about financial issues, but I guess I would just say with precedent of the board allowing new construction to have shingle roofing, that speaking for the client, that is the desired building material, or roofing material. But that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. All right, I'll open it up for board discussion and a vote.
All right, well, I'll start, and I appreciate the staff asking for standing seam metal roof, but I don't think that is something we need to ask. I think all the comments have been addressed. I think the design looks great. I don't know if I was actually on the board or I was just waiting on something, but I remember this application last time, and I feel like all the changes are really well done. I would, and I don't want to cut off any comment, but I'm going to move for final approval, not needing to go to details of staff. He's got more than he needs for staff, other than the colors, final colors. So again, y'all might all disagree, but this is ready to go. This is ready to be submitted for permit, in my opinion. So that's what, if y'all let me, I will make that motion eventually.
Go.
Well, I think that's totally appropriate. And just I can't go without saying this, that if Johnny felt like it, if he wanted to either lower that secondary volume roof line or even raise the primary one just to disengage those two roofs, that would be fine by me. But otherwise, yeah, I agree with Eddie. It's ready to go.
So we have a motion on the floor for final approval. Do I have a second?
Second. Sorry, go ahead.
May I ask a question, even though we have a motion on the floor? And it's just about the hardy comment.
Yes.
About addressing that within the motion.
Did you want to make a revised motion, Glenn?
Not necessarily. I'm just curious, Eddie, if a material is specified but not available. Otherwise, I don't have any issue with.
He's got good, on his material sheet, he had good, good alternatives to the artisan.
Yeah, he
What's
called
that?
out Boral. He called out Boral,
Okay.
Glenn. I think Kim just didn't see that before.
Okay.
And I'm not concerned either way, you know, another material if needed be, I'm not, but he's got one that he can use now. So I'm okay with that.
Okay.
All right, so we had a motion on the floor for final approval by Eddie. We had a second by Julia. I will put it to a vote. Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Glenn,
Yay, in favor.
Eddie,
Yay in favor.
Julia.
Yay in favor.
Chair votes as majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Tucker.
That's a big thank you for you. Thanks a lot.
All right, agenda item number 5 is 42 LeGree Street. Kim, will give us an introduction, please?
Thanks, Lindsay. Just bear with me for just a moment. while I sort out our attendees and panelists. All right, 42 LeGree Street's requesting conceptual approval for the renovation of building and construction of rear addition. The building's category 3 in the Charlestown neighborhood, constructed in 1900 in the old and historic district. And here's an aerial for your familiarity with the site between Logan and, is that Orange Street, just north of Trad. It's just some existing site images. Looking north on LeGree and south. And some Sanborn maps from 1902 and 1955. And with that said, I'll turn it over to Ms. Jennings. And the floor whenever you're ready.
Ms. Jennings, I can see you, but I can't hear you.
Does she have an audio problem?
Is she dialed in and also on video? Kim, you're muted.
She's raised her hand, but I can't do anything else.
Ms. Jennings, have you tried speaking?
What was that, Lindsay?
I didn't know if she tried speaking.
Can she just call?
If we're having audio problems, we can put this on the table and go to the next one until we figure this out.
Actually, it says you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry about that. For some reason, it cut out on my computer and I had to call. I'm sorry.
All right, we can hear you now. It might not be working again. Can you hear us, Ashley?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You can go ahead.
Okay, great.
Ready?
Yes, you have the floor. Ashley, you have the floor if you're ready.
Oh, okay. Am I just going to present it, or is Kim going to introduce the project? Or
Oh, I'm sorry, she did already.
I think you missed it.
okay, sorry. I was in the process of trying to get back on. Okay, so my apologies. I don't know what happened with my computer. This is an existing single house. It's been a family home for about a generation, and it was recently sold. And the new owner would like to make some repairs and renovations. The family lived there and enjoyed the house for a long time, and it needs some renovations now. The evolution of the structure is that there've been 2 Piazza infill additions and a rear addition. There's a Piazza infill addition on the 2nd floor that creates a bathroom. It just partially infills the Piazza, and then there's the rear 2-story Piazza infill addition. And then also, as you can look in this picture on the bottom right-hand corner, there's a addition that we think is post 1951 that was added to create a bedroom on the 2nd floor, a couple of bedrooms actually on the 2nd floor, and a larger kitchen on the 1st floor. Okay, next slide, please.
Oh. Okay, sorry about that.
So on the site plan, you can see that this is the addition that's there now that we're proposing to remove. I'm sorry, Kim, I'm ahead of you. Can you move to the next slide?
Yep. How's that? Is that good?
There you go. Thank you. So this is the existing site plan. And as you can see, this addition on the back that's oriented toward the rear of the property. Next slide, please. And this is our proposal. And the idea is to shift the addition just ever so slightly so that there's a distinction between the existing wall and the new wall. And then to create an outdoor space that frames the yard. Next slide, please. And the proposal is to, sorry. So here you can see the proposal for the 1st floor being a kitchen and a living space. And next slide, please. And on the 2nd floor, we're looking at a master suite. And as y'all know, with every single house, there's a challenge to access rooms. So the idea is to ever so slightly modify the rear room to create a hallway and then to make a master suite on the back of the house. Next slide, please. So there's very minimal changes to the street elevation except for the removal of that 2nd floor infill. Next slide. And on the south side, the idea is to use what's an existing pause in the building where the Piazza at one point returned and create the addition behind that pause. And open that side up for some glass and some view of the yard itself. Next slide, please. And here you can see that break in the facade as we propose with the new addition. Next slide, please.
Ashley, I think you're frozen. Ashley, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. And then the idea is to create a very simple addition in the back. And that's all I needed to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. Do we have any board questions for the applicant? All right. Kim, do we have any public comment?
We don't.
All right. If you will give us staff comments, please.
Sure. We really appreciate the differentiation of materials and the separation of roof lines that delineate two very distinct building campaigns. Normally, we'd recommend recessing the addition further on the driveway side and reducing the size of the openings to be more compatible with the primary house. However, the addition at the rear of the piazza conceals these elements. One other thing is we have approved the demolition request at the staff level. And the staff's recommending conceptual approval with final details to staff.
Thank you, Kim. Ashley, did you want to clarify or respond to anything raised in the staff comments?
No, thank you.
All right. Now I'll open it up for board discussion and a vote.
I move for final approval at staff, conceptual approval with final details to staff.
Okay.
I think it's a great design. It's what the board always asks for. It's subordinate, great proportions, good materials. Nothing really to discuss on my side.
I agree. It seems reasonable and appropriate. And I just had one tiny suggestion where those stairs from the terrace sort of spill out toward the driveway. If you wanted to, you could kind of wrap those around toward the street and hopefully avoid a rail that would be required projecting out toward the driveway. You know what I mean? If you just sort of let them wrap around instead of the blunt end of them sticking out toward the driveway, then you could put a rail on the wall or avoid that awkward condition of the end of those steps, if that makes sense.
We do have a motion on the floor. Eddie, I don't know if you wanted to present a revised motion incorporating Julia's comment, or
I think that's a good comment. What, Ashley, I'm not sure if you can hear us, but what she's talking about is returning the stairs to the face of the that little glass wall that you're putting in. I think that's a good comment unless the architect moves.
No, I think it's a great idea.
we have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval with final details to staff. Do I have a second?
Second.
Go ahead, Glenn.
All
Fillmore.
right. I think Glenn beat you to it, Fillmore.
Jeopardy.
That's the button. Okay, I'll put it to a vote. Julia?
Yay, in favor.
Fillmore?
Yay, in favor.
Eddie?
Yay in favor.
Glenn?
Yay in favor.
Chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Jennings.
Thank y'all. Sorry for my technicals.
Hope your dog's okay. It isn't too angry.
It's
All right, moving on to agenda item number 6, 22 Savage Street. Kim, please give us an introduction.
Thanks, Lindsay. All right, 22 Savage Street is requesting conceptual approval for the new construction of a single-car garage. The building itself is a Category 4 in the Charleston neighborhood and was built sometime around 1890 in the Old and Historic District. Here's your aerial image on the east side of Savage and some existing site photos. The applicant has provided some really really good ones, so I will let her share those. These are Sanborn maps. And with that, I'll turn it over to the applicant. Whenever you're ready, you have the floor.
Hi, this is Jenny Conlon. Bear with me, I have two Zooms running, so I'm getting a little confused. What we're trying to do is they want to add a garage to where a shed stood originally. And if you look at two of the Sanborn maps, the 1974 does show that there was a garage there as well at one time. We missed the statute of limitation on getting this garage in within the time that it would have been accepted by zoning. So we had to go in front of zoning also. We did pass zoning to get it in the same spot. So it's literally going to be sitting on the shed footer somewhat, corner that you see on the Sanborn maps. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So we're just trying to recreate basically the same thing, a single car garage, no longer a shed, but a usable building, and conceptual at this point. So just need your feedback.
Thank you, Ms. Conlon. Do we have any board questions for the applicant? Kim, did we lose Eddie, or is he?
He's not recused. We must have lost.
I see he's still attending.
Yeah, let's see.
Did anyone else have any questions for Ms. Conlon at the moment?
While we're waiting, I'll just ask, this is in a flood zone, right?
Ms. Conlon, you respond to that.
I think it is in a flood zone, but I don't have the information on this permit. I mean, on this site plan. I'm looking on both of them and I don't see the zone. Let me see what I have on my notes.
Julia, I'll pull it up.
That's not critical.
It is, let's see, DR 1F, 1890. Yeah, I do not have that.
Any other board questions?
Can y'all hear me? I think I was cut off and I'm back. So, am I live? Can anybody hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay.
Board
I have a question.
questions.
Is there an image, and maybe I'm missing something, of the new building next to the existing building? Is it not visible? I'm confused about this application.
There are elevations. I don't see where they are on here, but there were elevations.
This was the only thing I had.
Oh, in the Dropbox, Kim, there were elevations. There you go.
I don't have any elevations of the existing house or a complete site plan. So
Correct.
Well, I mean, off the top of my head, my guess is a garage is probably okay, but it's really hard if I don't have a whole site plan to know where it's going. So it's hard to know what we're reviewing. I mean, again, it's probably fine, but I just don't feel super comfortable without a site plan, to the street.
There's one in here. I'm scrolling through her drawing now.
And my guess is it's minimally visible, but I just think we need a real site plan.
Julia, to answer your question, it's in AE 11.
Okay. We don't really know what the grade is or anything, but so whatever.
Any other board questions at this time? All right, I'll move on to public comment. Kim, do we have anyone speaking from the public? I don't see anything in Dropbox.
We do not.
All right. If you will give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
The houses are very close together, which eliminates any line of sight except directly down the driveway. If it were to be visible, we would suggest expanding the garden shed portion of the garage to the rear to eliminate an awkward massing. Eliminate the boxed eaves. Hardy plank isn't appropriate as the artisan line has been discontinued, so submit an appropriate replacement at final review, and also submit engineering drawings for final review. Otherwise, we are comfortable recommending conceptual approval with final details to staff.
Thank you, Kim. Ms. Conlon, did you want to respond or clarify anything raised in staff comments?
Yes, I have been trying. This is, of course, my first submittal in quite some time. So I was trying to get some help with this, trying to get the packet together. And I guess the staff is super busy, which I understand. I'm super busy. So anyway, I've been requesting a review to make sure I have everything I need on this. And I've missed that site plan, so I apologize for that.
Thank you, Ms. Conlon. I'll open it up for board discussion and a vote at this time.
I can start, and along the lines of where Eddie was going, I think there's a lot of kind of unclear or missing information here. My inclination is that the height, scale, mass, and general architectural direction are okay, but currently the details and the site conditions and the flood zone and materials and a lot of things are just sort of missing and nebulous. I'd be happy if staff wants to take it from here, but I just feel like they're going to need a lot of clarification before they can give a final approval. Yeah, that's all I got.
In line with what Eddie and Julia have said, I mean, if this is it's in a flood zone, if it's prone to any kind of nuisance flooding, composite hardy plank or similar, Laurel's a little better, but those materials are not going to hold up to repetitive nuisance flooding if that yard ever floods. And I just, without a great elevation, and we just don't know about that. So I'm a little concerned about the direction of the material choice. I don't have anything to do with any objection to the height, scale, and mass and architectural direction, but I do think there is a lot of missing information here.
What if we consider giving conceptual approval, but having it come back?
Earl?
I was going to.
It would be a deferral, I think.
Okay.
Well, okay.
Not necessarily.
Well, yeah, I think it's kind of hard to give conceptual approval. I just don't think we have enough information. But I don't think that means she has to come back at conceptual, because I think she needs to have more information anyway. She needs to build a lot more for a building permit, right? So if we defer it, she could come back at preliminary. There's a little bit of a risk. I don't know. I think the issue is, my guess is this is going to be fine with some details, and I think the board comments, the staff comments are really good. But I don't feel comfortable enough actually giving an approval without that information. So just trying to help the applicant a little bit. But
what about this idea? What if we did, and we've done this before, it's kind of unusual, but I think it could be appropriate here because it's, I believe, such a simple project and could be handled by staff. What if we recommended deferral with final review by staff? That way the board doesn't have to see it again unless Kim wants to bring it back, and it can be handled by staff. Is that okay with you, Kim?
That's fine.
So Julia, you made a motion for deferral with final review by staff. Do I have a second?
I'll second
Thank you, Eddie. Put it to a vote. Glenn,
Yay in favor.
Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Julia,
Yay in favor.
Eddie,
In favor.
I took that as a yay in favor. The chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms.
If I can make one final comment just for the applicant's benefit, all of the requirements for submittals are available on the city's website. It's really thorough and clear what you're supposed to have at each phase of submittal. So hopefully you can find that and refer to that.
Thank you, Julia. Okay, agenda item number 7 Smith Street has been deferred. Deferred by staff. We are on agenda item number 8, 157 Wentworth Street, Unit E. Kim?
Thanks, Lindsay. 157 Wentworth Street's requesting preliminary approval for a new 2.5-story house at the rear. It's new construction in the Charleston Village neighborhood and the Old and Historic District. And here we are on Wentworth between Rutledge and Smith on the south side. Here's some existing site photos. And this is looking east on Wentworth and some Sanborn maps. And with that said, I'll turn it over to Neil Stevenson and Tara Romano.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
You can.
All right. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to try to run through some of these photographs quickly. You might remember this one. I guess you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So 157 Wentworth Street is on the south side of Wentworth. There's the main building there, 1853, the carriage house behind it, and then there's a decent amount of space left in the rear of the lot. Next slide. Same there, that's looking in the other direction. You can see the empty space available in the back. Next slide. There's a street view at the top. The brick building in the center is the main building, and then that's across the street. Next slide. Another view from Wentworth Street and looking down this building, the front building and the carriage house are currently under renovation and restoration right now. Next slide. This is the view of the west elevation of the main house. Next slide. And the carriage house behind it. The new structure is going to go behind this carriage house. Next slide. It's a view from the back looking forward. You can see the carriage house in the foreground and then the main house, which is 3 stories rising up in the back. Next slide. And the rear yard area, that big clearing behind the carriage house, is where a new house will go. And if you look at the picture on the bottom, the new house will be, excuse me, in alignment with the house that you see in the back on that adjacent property. The new house will be smaller than that house. Next slide. And another view from the back looking towards the driveway side. And at the bottom is the other side of the house down the neighbor's driveway. Next slide. Rear context at the top middle is the carriage house, and then the adjacent building in the rear. To the right is the brick house next door. To the left is the house on the left-hand side. And at the bottom left, that's looking down the driveway of the neighbors to their house in the back. Next slide. This is a current survey. Right now there's concrete pads, some old columns. You'll be able to see on the Sanborns, there were a lot of little garage buildings filling up the rear part of the lot before. Next slide. All right, so here's a little summary of the BAR, the board comments that were addressed. So the top two drawings are the previous submittal, and then at the bottom left, you can see the proposed and the elevation in the center, and then off to the right is just an enlarged of the proposed. So the motion from the preliminary BAR meeting on July 22nd was deferral with staff comments 2 to 5, board comments to clarify the specification of all materials and to eliminate the sloped columns. So the response to that part is that the sloped columns were eliminated. Staff comment 2 is other items that appear to give the design a suburban feel are the bulky trim, heavy columns, and the extraneous trim on the dormers. Refine these elements by reducing or eliminating. So our response was we slimmed down the dormers to remove the extra trim. The window and gable trim has been changed, slimmed down from 6 inches to 4 inches. The columns have been slimmed down from 8 inches to 6 inches square, and the top and bottom trim removed from the columns. The angled columns were straightened, cable rails changed back to the clean line, square pickets and squared off rails. And the upper horizontal trim band was changed to a traditional kind of gable trim line. Comment number 3, the board and batten sidings out of character with the proportions of the house and the character of the street. Eliminate in favor of the previous siding and specify the product source of the cement fiberboard. So the board and batten siding, we changed back to lap siding. And then fiber cement, you know, since the artisan wasn't available, honestly, I didn't have time to research it. It sounds like there maybe is. Did you guys say Boral makes one that's thicker now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we might take a look at that with staff, but for now we changed it to wood lap siding, 6-inch wood lap siding. And then the upper gable area, we changed it to a wood, 4-inch wood shiplap siding, which was, I guess, discussed in the meeting, maybe doing just a slight differentiation of a material above. The windows were changed from vinyl clad to metal clad, and, you know, keeping with the narrow 3-part simulated divided lights. And comment number 4, the building was already pushing the envelope in terms of height and subordination, especially to the carriage house, but this extra foot is concerning, should be reduced floor to floor. Our response was that we dropped the floor to floor heights by 6 inches each, resulting in a 1-foot overall decrease to the height of the building, back to the prior height approved in conceptual. And then number 5, staff continues to have concern about the rear porch proportions, French doors, windows, add to it cable railings, feel this entire south elevation warrants restudy. We'll see in the renderings and in the elevation. In response, we reduced the column spacing to, you know, we added columns basically to give it a more vertical proportions. And then the wide French doors were replaced with more typical rhythm of double hungs and single doors with just one narrow French door on the ground floor in the center. Cable rails changed back to clean line, square pickets, and squared off rails. And then we included some product specifications at the end. So I think we can go to the next slide. At the top is the existing site plan, and then the Sanborns. Starting at the left, the 1902 Sanborn shows the main house and the carriage house. And then the 1944, you start to see some buildings being built in the back and an addition being added to the main house. 1951 is the same as 44. And then 1955, you can see there were several just garage buildings filling that back area. Next slide.
Ramona, you've got about 2 minutes left.
Man, she's so bad at that. I thought I was going fast. All right. Area plan is the same. You can see at the top, kind of mimicking the building above. Zoning is the same. Next slide. Previous and proposed site plans are nearly the same. It's just the we added a landscape strip on the west side and changed the porch back. Next slide. Site sections at the top is the previous, the more, you know, contemporary looking building. At the bottom is the new one proposed. And you can see the floor to floors that we reduced and the 1 foot taken off the building. Next slide. Next slide. It's a view from Wentworth Street. Next slide. View from the neighbor's driveway. You can see in the previous and proposed here that you can see that it's shorter. It's 152 feet back. Next slide. The rear, you can see the more vertical proportions of the back. Next slide. This is the new rendering. It's not really a BAR right away, but it shows how the cleaner lines and more traditional look that we brought it back to. Next slide. Previous and proposed, we just did light modifications to respond to the new doors and windows on the back. Next slide. Minor modifications there. Next slide. Got a little smaller up there. Next slide. Not much change there. Next slide. All these elevations, I put the conceptual at the top and then the previous down there and then the proposed, because kind of general comment was to bring it back a little closer to what was approved in conceptual, you know, except for to slim up things. So next slide. Same here, you can see we went, you know, back a little more traditional and slimmed things down. Next slide. There's the more verticality that you can see, big difference, I think, between the conceptual and previous. Next slide. Same thing. Next slide. Next slide. These are just previous and proposed wall sections. Get through. Next slide. Previous. Next slide. Straight columns. Next slide. These are just specifications of the windows, Sierra Pacific metal clad with 5/8 inch SDL bars and the putty wood configuration. Next slide. This is the last, I think the last one I missed. This is the patio doors, Sierra Pacific metal clad. Next slide. And the columns are 6x6, no cap, no bottom trim, and the hardy smooth boards. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Romano. Do we have any board questions for the applicant? All right. Kim, do we have any public comment?
I don't have any public comment.
All right. You'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Sure. The applicant has successfully followed board directive from the July 22nd meeting. And the information provided for this review also fulfills the submittal requirements for final review. Window selections, color, wall selection, doors are appropriate, so we're recommending final approval.
Thank you, Kim. Ms. Romano, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the staff comment?
No, thank you though.
All right. Then I'll open it up for board discussion and a vote on this application.
Hey, Lindsay, I apologize. I had one quick question for Tara.
Go ahead.
But I forgot. The overhang on that shed dormer is really wide. I was just curious if that was if you can look at the front elevation, curious if that was like an intentional design move or.
You know, I've kind of thought that too, and I just end up having so many comments sometimes for the drafts person that I might have let that one go, but I would agree with you. I think that could be slimmed up a little bit.
Cool, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, is this board discussion, right?
Yep, never on board discussion, so.
I mean, I don't really have anything else to say on this one. I think they followed the directives we gave them pretty well. I would go ahead and move for final approval unless anybody else wants to say anything.
No, I agree with the dormer comment with the overhang of the eaves on the rake side.
Well, we have a motion on the floor for final approval. Julie, did you
Yeah.
have?
Let me just add that little board comment in. since everybody agrees that the, to reduce the overhang on the shed dormer, plural shed dormers, I assume.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for final approval with a board comment to reduce the width of those shed dormers.
Overhang.
Oh, excuse me, reduce the
Eve.
overhang of those shed dormers. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Eddie. I'll put it to a vote. Glenn,
Oppose.
did you say opposed?
Yeah, opposed.
Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Julia,
Yay in favor.
Eddie?
Yay in favor.
Chair votes with a majority and the motion passes 4 with 1 for, and 1 against. Thank you, Tara.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Okay. Agenda item number 9, 127 Smith Street was withdrawn by staff. We are on the final agenda item, number 10, 49 South Battery. Kim, if you'll give us an introduction, please.
Thanks, Lindsay. 49 South Battery is requesting final approval for slate roof replacement in like kind. The building's category 2 in the Charlestown neighborhood and was built in 1795. It's in the Old and Historic District. Here's an aerial image, just so you know where we're talking about. It's between King and Legree on the south side of South Battery. I'm good, thanks. And some existing site photos. Here's the east side and the west. This is looking west on South Battery and looking east. Some Sanborn maps from 1902 and 1955. And with that said, I will turn it over to the applicant for the presentation. Mr. Piquette is with us tonight.
Mr. Piquette, you're on mute, but whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
The peach.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, yes, ma'am. Yeah, I'm Defoe Piquette with Piquette Roofing Incorporated, requesting, for approval to replace the slate roof at 49 South Battery. We're going to reuse existing gutters and ridge tile. We're going to salvage those and reuse those on the roof. And if the board has any questions for me, yeah. Hello?
Oh, Mr. Piquette,
Yes.
thank you. Do we have any board questions for Mr. Piquette?
Mr. Piquette, so you're gonna just replace this with slate?
Yes, I would take existing slate off and, put a new slate roof on. And we can reuse the existing ridge tile.
Okay.
I have a quick question. What slate are you going to use? Color?
Yeah, it's a grayish color. It's gray slate. I think I believe my brother brought one down, and I'm not sure who he gave it to. Who goes?
Yeah.
Is that it in the picture?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Do you know where they're coming from? Do you know who's supplying them?
Let's see. I'd have to look back in the paperwork right now. I'll put that right in front of me. Let's see. Hold on just a minute. It's from the Evergreen Slate Company.
Thank you.
Where I'm. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know that.
Any other board questions at this time? All right, Kim, do we have any public comment?
We do. We have April Wood.
Right?
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the application for final approval for the slate roof replacement in kind. We understand that this is an expensive undertaking and we applaud the applicant for their good stewardship of this historic house. This quality slate roof will serve the building for many generations to come. We're strongly in support of this application and recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you, April. Kim, do we have anyone else speaking from the public?
I believe we have Virginia Swift, although I don't have her signed up. Virginia, you have the floor if you're ready to speak.
The Preservation Society is not commenting on this agenda item. Thank you.
Thanks for that clarification.
And is that all we have?
That's it.
All right, Kim, if you'll give the staff comments and recommendations, please.
Thanks. We are in support of the application to replace the roof in like kind, but urge caution for details around the dormer. The staff's recommending approval.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. Piquet, did you want to clarify or respond to anything raised in the public comment or in the staff comment?
No, ma'am, I don't have any comment right now unless they have any other questions for me.
Thank you, Mr. Piquet. All right, I'll open it up for board discussion and a vote.
I move for final approval.
We have a motion on the floor for final approval. Do I have a second?
Second, one more.
All right, I'll put it to a vote. Julia,
Yay in favor.
Glenn? Glenn, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yay in favor.
Eddie,
Yay in favor.
Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
All right, chair votes with the majority and the motion